Hello, I'm back. Um, so I haven't done many videos lately. I did a video which I called "What is Truth?" I believe it was called, because I did one called "What is Freedom?" And it has a few views. It was the first one I did that was kind of, I guess, overtly socio-political in nature. Just going to warn everybody, I'm going to be doing quite a bit more of those going forward. The What is Truth video, the last 2 minutes of it kind of veered into some personal stuff that when I did the video was relevant. Now I think, I'm not going to say it's irrelevant. It's not, but it's no longer topical. It doesn't reflect where I'm at right now. I've suffered kind of a minor loss of late, such as the way of my existence, I guess. So I didn't want to put something up that was going to be a reminder to myself and others who watched it. Part of that video that was not posted, I also talked a good bit about TV shows and fan bro sites, as I call them. Raged against them. There might be some of that in this video. I don't know. It's very possible. I'm not playing any music today in the background. I kind of forgot to do that. I had it up pretty loud on the What is Truth video. I forgot who I was playing. And in the Mandalorian video. Apologies for the Mandalorian video, because I should have brushed up on my research before I did it, because I'm talking about all these characters, and half of them I forgot their names. A couple of cases I forgot the names of the actors, and then in a couple of cases, like with McNulty as Cool or whatever, and IG-88 played by Taika Waititi, voiced. Those were both voiced by Taika Waititi. They didn't physically play the characters. That's not an uncommon thing these days. So I apologize and clarified all that in the little text, the notes on the video itself. So I hope some rabid Mandalorian fans were not thinking, man, this guy does not know his shit. He does not pay attention to the Star Wars minutia like he does some other things. I mean, and if it was Twin Peaks, Hannibal, Daredevil, the big three, as I call them, the holy triumvirate, closely followed by Star Trek, Deep Space Nine. Those are my top 4 shows of all time. It might be different. Star Wars, also, I expressed some anti-Lucas sentiment in that video, so, so far I haven't endured anyone having a cataleptic aneurysm, paroxysms of rage directed at me yet. My history with expressing my very outspoken and very in the minority views on Star Wars have brought a lot of hate to my doorstep from rabid fans. The same kind of fans who love the fanbro sites, by the way. So, we're just ne'er shall the twain meet between I and those people, obviously. In any case, I'm going to go ahead and unfurl a TV Musing episode 3 today. And speaking of Star Trek, it is going to be about Star Trek. I'm not going to be talking, since TV Musing is recent, current, somewhat not too in the distant past things. Therefore, I did, wasn't going to do Twin Peaks, but obviously I did 2 Twin Peaks segments, just all Twin Peaks. It was that big a thing to me. Just as I did one segment on Hannibal, one segment on Daredevil. So if I were going to do past things, I couldn't do Blue reviews because Deep Space Nine is not on Blu-ray yet, which is a crime against all life in the universe, to put it mildly. It's disgusting and ridiculous. But I could do a TV musing on it if I were going to delve into older shows that aren't on Blu-ray, and there are a fair amount of older shows I like that are on Blu-ray. So maybe I'll expand TV musing from recent current shows I'm watching and enjoying to just shows that I'm watching and enjoying that haven't quite made this way to the Blu-ray format. Maybe ones that have been on DVD before or are still. Things like Soap, that's one that comes to mind. Carnival, maybe. I'm not sure if Carnival ever went on Blu-ray or not. I don't think it did, but let me know if it did in the comments. I always say that, but no one ever takes me up on it. I don't mind being corrected and being given information. I like information. Information. I won't be doing The Prisoner because I haven't watched the entire series yet. As old as I am, and I've only seen like 2 or 3 episodes of The Prisoner. So the old school fans, that's probably another heresy. I'm just a heretic, man. Burn me at the stake. So anyway, speaking of Star Trek, yes, I'm going to talk about Star Trek. I'm talking about the modern, currently in production, currently screening Star Treks that are out via CBS All Access, which soon I think is going to change the venue is going to change to Paramount Plus, which echoes 2 things: Disney Plus, obviously, which I mentioned on my WandaVision video and on The Mandalorian. And also, I guess WandaVision was my first TV musing. Okay. That's been pretty popular video. That's rightfully. I'm going to do another TV musing on WandaVision as the series progresses. I didn't do one Friday for episode 3. Again, I don't want to jump onto the typical fan kind of things that happen on YouTube. I mean, obviously, I'm inspired by those videos to do my own, and obviously, there's going to be some correlation with me giving info, giving theories, behind the scenes, and just covering that kind of material. But a lot of those videos and channels tend to have a formula, like a new episode of a current series will drop, and they go, so thoughts on episode blah 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 of this show. And so for like 15 minutes to a half hour, they'll talk about the episode and do these kind of reaction things, like they go, and that kind of like Monk the Scream or Home Alone graphic. I want to get that out of my head now. Feigning shock or exaggerating shock, and usually in the thumbnail pictures. And a lot of times then they'll give like these long, laborious theories about what they think is going to happen. And sometimes there's a lot of merit and substantial, legitimate extrapolation going on. But as I've talked about on my Twin Peaks video, sometimes this kind of speculation veers way, way out into fanfic. It's nothing that really has any root in any real evidence of what we see on the screen. It's just more like this guy doing this video or gal wants this to happen. So then they're going to go, what could happen? But by that logic, anything could happen. But the good thing about current TV long form storytelling, to me, one of the good things is that there is a plan, a design, an arc or a series of arcs. Whereas in the old days, TV was just, we were making up as we went along. There wasn't as much continuity. There wasn't much payoff because there wasn't much setup. Soap operas were a notable exception. Though even soap operas have gone through long periods of making it up as we go along kind of shit. Whereas when I was growing up, a lot of soap operas had story Bibles by the head writer, and there would be arcs. They didn't call them arcs commonly, ARCS back then, like they do now, story arcs, but they were there, they were in place, and they could take, be short arcs. They could be a short arc back then would be like 3 months, but sometimes they were long. Like I remember the story about the Aztec treasure in General Hospital. Man, that story started when I was maybe a junior or senior in high school. I'm dating myself here badly. And man, it went on into my the next year of high school or post graduation. I mean, it went on for a solid year, if not more. The only soap opera that's in the modern-ish era, like the millennium, generally they've done the arcs, like the specific arcs that long, up from inception to payoff. I guess The Young and the Restless still moves that slow. Even it's speeded up a bit in recent years, from what I understand. I haven't really seen it, but a couple of times in the millennium. But from reading about it and talking to my parents, who before they passed were watching, it was the only soap opera my dad ever got addicted to. He used to kind of mock my mom's soap operas, but man, he liked The Young and the Restless, man. What's Victor up to now? That's what he would bellow. And there's probably still a lot of elderly people who watch Young and the Restless even today. And they burst into a room that time of day and go, "What's Victor up to now?" And Eric Braeden, originally named Hans Gudegast, he's about 80 now. So I mean, he's been up to shit for a long time. I mean, he came on that show in 1980, I believe. So 80 and 8. So yeah, he's been on there 40 years. Half of his life, he's been doing Young and the Restless. When he was Hans Gudegast, he was in a series in the 60s called The Rat Patrol that my parents enjoyed. He was German. I think he played a German. I don't know if it was kind of a serious, kind of like a non-comedic Hogan's Heroes, where the Nazis were the good guys, or I thought it was a World War II-ish show. I could be wrong. It could have been just non-Nazi Germans having adventures in a rat patrol. But they would talk about, as soon as my mom started watching Young and the Restless. There's Hans Gudegast from Rat Patrol. Me and your father used to watch that when you were a baby. And I was like, a baby? I don't even think I was born then. But I wasn't born too many years later. I was pretty damn young when Young and the Restless, I started watching it, which was sort of like, funny fact, in Charlotte, North Carolina, the networks here were really uptight and morally upright and loved censorship. I mean, not just of episodes or parts of episodes or like bleeping words out of movies. They would like censor. They would, if they didn't like a show because they thought it was going to be controversial, they would just not show the whole series. No matter how many seasons the series went, it's just like it wouldn't play in this part of the country. So Young and the Restless began on TV, I believe, 1973, 1974, right? We didn't get it until 1979. Those first 6 years, man, they were just too much for Charlotte net stations to handle. Too much sex. That's what I kept hearing. I never saw any of those episodes. I could probably go on YouTube and watch some really old Young and the Restless episodes and see how much sex was in them. One of my all-time favorite series, which I mentioned a minute ago, Soap. The entire first season of Soap, first run, was not shown at all in Charlotte. I was supposed to be showing in prime time. It wasn't showing at all. Then, when it came up for reruns, they didn't put the reruns on prime time either. They started putting them at 11 p.m. on Saturday night. So, which is funny because I get the 11 o'clock being after prime time, but it was a Saturday, so kids could have stayed up and watched it anyway. And I did. I did watch it. So, that show started, I believe, in 1977. And so that whole fall and going into spring, it didn't play here. So, but going into, I guess fall, I don't know, winter is what I meant. So I guess going into spring, when they repeated the 20 episodes or whatever, they played at 11 p.m. on Saturday, and I watched it every Saturday, and I fucking loved that show, and I still do. I've got the whole series on DVD. I'm waiting for that Blu-ray. So anyway, enough babbling. I mean, I could go on for an hour about this kind of stuff or do an arbitrary interlude, but I committed myself to talking about CBS All Area Access or whatever it's called. Slew of new Star Trek shows. There's been 4 either announced or filmed and or aired. Let's get the ones that have been announced only out of the way. Star Trek Section 31, as I understand it, will be taking place in the 23rd century on the Star Trek timeline, about 10 years before the events of Star Trek: The Original Series, when Kirk takes over the Enterprise and it begins its 5-year mission. Michelle Yeoh will star, and I also believe this guy. I'm gonna have to look up some of these. I actually have my notes here on the side of the screen, which I'm gonna refer to. I should have done this with the Mandalorian. This guy named Shazad Latif. Huh. Shazad Latif. He played Ash Tyler. He also played the character Vogue. Well, Vogue's dead as a Klingon. But yeah, Ash Tyler. So I believe Ash Tyler will be a supporting character on Section 31. Quick call back again, Deep Space Nine. Section 31 was originated there. It was like a deep a black ops intelligence organization within Starfleet. And a couple of seasons of Deep Space Nine, there was actually a full-blown galactic war going on, intergalactic war, the Dominion War, with different sides aligning against each other, and of course Starfleet versus Starfleet battled the Dominion, which we didn't know the true nature, who the Dominion exactly was. Like, we knew there was a Dominion and there were other races, like the Jem'Hadar and some of these other races that were coalescing around it as its allies. I can't remember the name of a couple of the other races. And I believe the Romulans. I think the Romulans joined the Dominion, but the Dominion turned out to be the Founders, the race that Odo, one of the officers aboard the Deep Space Nine craft, played by the late Rene Auberjonois, who I met one time. He was really nice. Founders were his race, shapeshifters. They were the Founders because I believe they were the first of the Starseed. They were the first of the humanoid blueprint for races within the Star Trek universe. But they weren't solids. They called solid people solid because they were mutable, they were transmutable, malleable, and they had the blueprint. They had the humanoid default body structure. But they didn't have. They weren't stuck to it. They weren't. They could change into anything pretty much. They could mimic. They could see. But anyway, Section 31 was introduced during the Dominion War as kind of a black ops, kind of deep state kind of thing within Starfleet that would do dirty jobs and do things like the CIA and stuff would do on Earth. But this is in the 24th century, and they're doing it on a galactic scale, but they're still secretive. They're virtually unknown. That's why we didn't really hear about them prior to Deep Space Nine, but it came to the fore their existence during this war because it involved a lot of uh, espionage. Because obviously you're battling a race like the Founders slash the Dominion, who can shapeshift into anything. They could be spies anywhere. Kind of like the Skrulls in Marvel, and so they're doing a prequel Section 31 series. In other words, something that takes place about 120 years ish before the Section 31 events of Deep Space Nine. But it's going to be they've kind of um, made up the Section 31 has been around quite a lot longer than Starfleet. That was revealed in Star Trek Discovery, which I'm getting to. The other in development show is Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which I'm behind on my shit, man. I didn't even know this existed until about 3 days ago, but I've read up on it. I'm not sure what month it's debuting. Not sure what month Section 31 is either. It keeps getting pushed back. But this one was greenlit pretty fast, and apparently was, on people's minds as soon as Discovery Season 2 wrapped because of the popularity of some of the plots within the Season 2. And this involves Strange New Worlds is a prequel show to the original series. Not the original series as in a prequel to Kirk and his Enterprise 5-year mission, but a prequel to the original Star Trek pilot from 1965. Star Trek was obviously the name of the show, but the actual episode name was The Cage. Footage from The Cage was later incorporated into an episode, two-part episode, I believe, of the Star Trek series proper, and they called that two-part of the Menagerie. So, but The Cage itself, I think I've only seen The Cage in its own form as it was intended once. It was in black and white. Pretty sure it was in black and white, where Star Trek, the original series, was in color. But I've seen the Menagerie many times. And basically, it was the original iteration of the Enterprise, which was Captain Christopher Pike, played by Jeffrey Hunter, and Majel Barrett played number one, the female first officer, which for the time that was pretty hip, pretty helping create that progressive, socio-political slant of Star Trek. We'll get into that later in this episode about Star Trek because it has a lot of bearing on Discovery. And then there was Science Officer Spock, played by, you guessed it, Leonard Nimoy. That Enterprise wasn't addressed when they got into the series itself with Kirk and Spock and McCoy and Scotty and Uhura, etc. However, the Menagerie brought it into that main continuity. It affirmed that, indeed, we knew Spock was the same character, but it had just never been addressed. And so here it was addressed, and Spock, of course, had a lot of loyalty to Pike. They had been friends, and he had served under Pike before he was a first officer under Kirk. Aboard the Enterprise, but it was a prior mission. I don't know if it had designated years or not, year span, though we're going to find that out in Strange New Worlds. The Strange New Worlds is going to be, obviously recast, none of the same characters. I think they're all deceased. Is Majel Barrett deceased? She might not be deceased, but we obviously know Leonard Nimoy, and Jeffrey Hunter's been deceased for many, many years. But anyway, those characters are introduced in Discovery Season 2, played by the current actors. Anson Mount plays Christopher Pike, Rebecca Romaine plays number one, and Ethan Peck plays Spock. So let's get into the currently airing series. I'm going to do Picard last because it's only had one season, and I've watched it all the way through once. I don't know if I've watched any episodes more than once. I have to say I'm a few details on my memory slightly shaky on. It's maybe not as bad as The Mandalorian, but maybe some similar things. Like there's a couple of key characters I've forgotten their names and or the actors. So I might cheat and jump into that with my little screen within a screen. But first, let's talk about Discovery. It's had 3 seasons. Season 3 just wrapped. I mean, just finished airing. The season finale just aired about 2 weeks ago. So Discovery, Discovery has been a behind the camera, really troubled production from the beginning. The fan response or hater response, whatever, and both either, has been really erratic from season to season or even within seasons. Even in myself, I've had a varying reaction to the show. I've never been a hater. Um, there are some things here and there that have bothered me a little. If you want like big explications on all the things that bother people and they hate with a virulent passion, then check out those fan bro sites. I highly recommend sites like Bleeding Cool and IO9 and Screen Rant, my very favorite fan bro site. These sites are pretty much like, let's just destroy everything while making money off of the stuff that we allegedly love. I don't know how much money they make. Maybe not. These are websites. They could be a labor of love, or in this case, a labor of hate. Um, but I despise their coverage. Their news sometimes is very ahead of the curve. If they would just be news reporting, I'd be okay. But instead, they have to kind of go on to tell you why they hate it and why you should hate it. They're really into that, like influencer kind of behavior, like sharing, why you should hate it, like why we should collectively as fans think Titans is a piece of shit and Discovery is just garbage, etc. And man, I'm in my wits end with those sites. I could do a whole video just on them, but it has to be more detailed than just a little ranting here, which I've done about them before, I know. But anyway, Discovery, though, has evoked that kind of reaction. So let's get into what Discovery is. Star Trek Discovery, I believe it started in 2017, I believe. Maybe I could cheat and find out, more like real details, like confirmable, verifiable, non-embarrassing omissions. We're just going to look at my little screen. My eyes are bluer with this light on. I need numbers here. September 24th, 2017. Wow, that's been a long time ago, really. That was when episode 1 debuted. So, how many episodes went on that season? Does it say? I don't know. Okay, so a few facts. You probably know some of these. This is the 7th television series in the Star Trek franchise. There was the original series, The Next Generation, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Voyager. Hold on. Am I missing one? Enterprise. I guess I am missing one. The 7th series. Enterprise. The first since Enterprise concluded. So I guess they're counting Star Trek the Animated Series. That must be it. Star Trek the Animated Series, Next Gen, DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, and Discovery. So, yeah. So this takes place, as I've kind of alluded to with my Section 31 rants. Discovery initially takes place a decade before the events of Star Trek the Original Series. I believe Star Trek the Original Series, the years when it took place were roughly, or maybe exactly, let me think here, 300 years ahead of where, from the time of the broadcast. So the show started in 1966. So I believe roughly 2266 or thereabouts was when season 1, the Kirk crew 5-year mission began. Now, the events of the Cage and flashbacks of the menagerie that I mentioned, they took place. I know it's on a big Star Trek chronology. There's a gray one by the Okuda couple, the Okudas, which I don't have, but it's pretty invaluable, incredible document, Star Trek chronology. But it only goes up to the last edition that came out was, I think, Incorporated Enterprise, but I'm not certain. I know it went all the way through Voyager. But what I was going to say, among many other things, was that the Cage, I'm not sure how far into the mission of the previous Enterprise mission helmed by Captain Pike that it took place. So, but I'm going to say, it was roughly the 2050s. I'm sorry, the 2250s. Like, if it was a decade, it was 2265, I guess. So it's 66. Yeah, 2266 would have been the beginning of Kirk's mission. So, 2256, roughly 2255, would have been around the time the Cage took place, roughly. But I'm thinking from the timeline that they're fleshing out now is that it's a little, the Cage itself, those events took place toward the end of the 2250s, maybe even 2260. Maybe not that many years before Kirk took over. Again, this is all in published chronologies. They're just going to probably tweak it when Strange New Worlds come out. But that mission, the Cage, does take place within the bigger spectrum of things. The episode The Cage takes place after either right after Star Trek Discovery Season 2 ends, or it takes place a little before Star Trek Discovery. I can't remember if the Enterprise was already on its mission when things got kind of bumped around a little. I'll get to that. So anyway, so roughly if we go before that, I believe Star Trek Discovery Season 1 on the timeline takes place about 22, 10 years, 2256, right, 2255, 2256, 2254, maybe at the earliest. I have read an exact time, but I can't recall. Whoops. I should have that here in my cheat notes. But you get the message. The mid 2250s. So that means the story. They keep saying, the pitch, the tagline includes that Star Trek Discovery takes place roughly a decade before the original series. So we'll stick with that. It was decided that there was going to be a series that was not going to have a captain as the main character for the first time ever. Of course, that's not true. In Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Sisko was commander. Now he did run Deep Space Nine, or Terok Nor, which was originally the Joran space station, and that was converted by the Federation. So he did run it. So he was still the leader of things on behalf of Starfleet, but he was not the captain of a starship. Now later, he got promoted to captain and helmed the Defiant during the Dominion War. But so this whole thing of the first non-captain, that's not actually true. The other thing about an African American being the main star, being a first, that's not true either, because Commander Sisko was, you guessed it, an African American, played by the amazing Avery Brooks. However, there had not been non-leadership main character in any of the series. So this was a first discovery. and there had never been a African American woman as the major character. So in those two senses, it was a first. It's just sometimes the wording of these things, not to be like pedantic or anal, but the wording is inaccurate. A lot of these, the first black non-captain. That's not true. No, that was Deep Space Nine. I say this because I love Deep Space Nine. I think it's the most underrated and underdiscussed. I don't know. Maybe Enterprise is more underrated in a way, but Deep Space Nine was so much greater than Enterprise, and I liked Enterprise. The only series I didn't particularly care for overall was Voyager, though I've seen most of the episodes, and there were some I really enjoyed, and I respect it as being part of the mosaic, the continuity. Um, we'll get to that another time too, because there's threads from Voyager that feed into Star Trek Picard. Um, so so Sonequa Martin Green, I believe is her name. She plays Michael Burnham. And the basic premise, the way the show starts, is there's a starship called I believe it's called the Shenzhou, and a Chinese named ship, which is cool. Haven't been many of those. The because the Kobayashi Maru was Japanese, but it has a Chinese captain, a Chinese female captain, played by Michelle Yeoh, the great Taiwanese actress, stunt woman, martial artist. You name it, she can do it, and she's brilliant. I've always been a huge fan of hers. When I heard she was going to be on Star Trek, I was like, "This is awesome! I'm watching this." And she has stayed with the show, though not exactly. Yes, the same character, not exactly the same character. We'll get to that. The character she plays as Discovery debuts is Captain Philippa Georgiou of the Shenzhou. Philippa Georgiou. So Philippa Georgiou sounds like a Greek character. So, but mind you, this is the 23rd century. So, you know, humanity is becoming increasingly racially mixed, especially in America, with each passing day in the 20th century. So think of the 23rd century. So it's really not hard to imagine that you've got a character with a Greek name that appears Asiatic. And Discovery is kind of making solid hints and decisions along those kind of lines as it goes on, and I think that's incredible. This series does go boldly where no man or no one, quote Picard in a more politically correct and accurate terminology. This series does go where no one has gone before. So we've already established. Now we've got Philippa Georgiou. That's a first character on screen type of character. The star Michael Burnham. Okay, and a unisex name, Michael. Michael is a unisex name in our current reality, but that's more the exception. It's not as common as even say Kelly or something. There was Michael Learned, the actress who played on The Waltons. That's the first female named Michael I encountered. And there's been others, of course. There are people naming their daughters Michael, but it's generally a male name and a very, very popular male name. I've personally had friends named Michael, numerous friends named Michael who were males. So again, we're in the 23rd century, so we've got an African American female named Michael. So again, no one bats an eyelash. This is very, those old rigid parameters of things have broken down. They've eroded. They've been left behind. Progress. That's what Star Trek's always been about: is progress, moving forward, egalitarianism, brilliant ideals, and Discovery is kind of the ultimate realization of all of that in so many ways. Just such to the point where I have learned, and many have learned, unfortunately, that I knew this was true of Star Wars fandom. I saw this when The Force Awakens and Last Jedi came out, that huge swaths of Star Wars fandom were white supremacists, homophobes. But man, there's a lot of them in Star Trek fandom. They're generally people older than me, I'm noticing online, from what I can tell. Some of them, though, are my age or even younger, though. Some of them are pretty young, too. And I guess racism and homophobia never go out of style. Every generation adopts it to varying degrees, but not in the world of Star Trek. In the world of Star Trek, it's an anomaly by the time we get to the 23rd and 24th centuries, which it should be here and now, but it's not. So, hey, sound like a bleeding heart liberal. I'm actually not a liberal. I'm far, far, far to the left wing of being a liberal. So that means I'm in another whole universe than being conservative. Like conservative is like a bridge too far for anybody, in my opinion. I'm not never been down with conservatives or the right wing. I'm into the left wing, but I'm into a left wing that's like way to the left of the liberal wing. I eschew liberalism because it's become its own entrenched right wing conservative ideological system now, unfortunately. Taste of my future videos here, sorry. So I'm only gotten part of the way towards this theme, though. This video could be 2 or 3 hours long. So bear with me. I hope you haven't made any other plans. If you get something to drink, I'm going to get something to drink. Not alcoholic this time. I think I drank alcohol through my WandaVision video, maybe one of them. This is cherry Coke I got at Subway. It's pretty fucking awesome. I don't drink non-diet sodas very often, but every once in a while. So, okay, this is fun. So, what else about Discovery? The main premise is that Michael Burnham she's not the first officer, is she? She might be the first officer of the Shuzu. I know she's like a science officer, and there's reasons for that. I'll get into in a minute. This is where the continuity implants take place. I don't want to call them retcons because that's another complaint people have about the show is they're like, it doesn't fit continuity wise. It contradicts everything. Fuck this. How come we never saw this before? Well, you weren't looking hard enough. No, just kidding. It does fit. If you watch the series, all of seasons 1 and all of season 2, it does. It's pretty flawless, really. I mean, if you just approach it with an open mind, maybe a smidgen of suspension of disbelief, but it works. It works for me from the beginning. So we'll get into that. It hinges on what the background of the Michael Burnham character. So what's the actual plot of Discovery before we get into all that? The plot is they're on the Shuzu, and I think I'm not sure if any other characters that later serve on Discovery are on that ship. I would need to watch episode 1 again. It's been quite a while. I would like to get all this on Blu-ray. I love this show, to be honest. But essentially, there's a clash of territory between the Shuzu and some Klingon vessels. And so here you dip into the idea that yes, there's things have been tense between the Federation and the Klingons for a long time. But the thing is, when did they actually go to war? Now, I don't know in the original series if they mentioned this. I mean, they didn't mention a year because they never really, in the original series, they never mentioned the actual years that took place. Now, that, of course, changed after all these chronologies. The movies came out, and then, of course, Next Gen kept a documentation of all that, like what year we were in. So, relative to the original series, when was where an actual war with Klingons? Not a Cold War, but an actual like firing war. And I'm not sure what. Again, I'd have to go back and watch the Klingon episodes of the original series, especially the first one the Klingon appeared in. I want to say that was the one with, I don't remember. Maybe Michael and Sarah played Kang in that one. I think there were about 5 Klingon episodes, maybe of the original series. Many more than that in the next gen, obviously, since one of the crew was a Klingon. So by the time we get 80 years on from the original series episode 3, I'm sorry, original series season 3, and next gen pilot Encounter at Farpoint, 80 years have passed, 78 or 80 years have passed. And, or I might even be wrong about that. It's not season 3. It's between the film Star Trek. What film were they on then? Star Trek 4, Search for Spock. I guess that's correct. I don't know if Final Frontier. Final Frontier came out in 89, maybe? Yeah, does that sound right? Yeah, Undiscovered Country was after that. Okay, so, yeah, between Search for Spock, the film, and Encounter at Farpoint, I believe there's 78 years. I do know that between in the 24th century scene in Star Trek Generations, the 7th film, and the first with the next gen cast, between that scene and the jump forward, which takes place, I guess, was next gen still in the air? I think it may have just gone off the air. So between the 2 or 3 years after the Undiscovered Country, Star Trek 6, that's the period where that prologue takes place. Then the main body of the movie takes place a year or two after the end of the series of Next Gen. But between those two parts of Generations, it says on screen 80 years later. So we haven't broken all the exact. Obviously, I'm a little rusty on my chronology. I mean, I'm ahead of a lot of people, believe me, because I am a uber geek with a good memory. But I used to know this shit cold, so I really need to buy that chronology book. Damn it, and get on Wikipedia and like start breaking it down. And also that Memory Alpha site of Star Trek is incredible. It's pretty. It's like the comprehensive online encyclopedia of all things Star Trek. Highly recommend it. As you can tell, I'm not into Star Wars, but I am a Trekkie kind of. I'm definitely, I guess they call you a mild Trekkie, like a Trekker, like a non-fanatical Trekkie. I might as well just say I'm a Trekkie now. I mean, seriously. I've committed a lot of time to this shit and thought, obviously. So I might as well just come out of the closet. I'm a Trekkie. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a Trekkie. So, yeah. So there's a territorial dispute between a Federation starship and Klingon ships. And I'm a little hazy on memory. It's been a couple years as to the exact details, but Captain Philippa Georgiou makes a particular call on how to deal with this, and she is countermanded by, I guess it was her first officer, Michael Burnham, who Philippa was more than just her captain. She was her friend. She was her mentor. There was this intense bond between them. So, of course, this hurts Philippa's feelings. But it doesn't just hurt her feelings. It really royally pisses her off. It's insubordination of the highest degree. Because, again, we're still operating from a kind of a military style operation organization. So essentially, what Michael does, which I forgot exactly what she does. Basically, it does not solve the problem, it exacerbates the conflict. And the Klingons declare war. And I think they destroy the Shuzu, or at least they don't destroy it. I remember Philippa and with Michael, maybe, I don't know if any other crew members went, but somehow or another, they teleported over to a Klingon vessel. And there's a battle that ensues, and Philippa is killed, and then all hell breaks loose. Basically, the Klingons declare war on the Federation, and they blame Michael. Michael's actions of insubordination began this war. So Michael is arrested for treason, insubordination, treason, whatever, the equivalent of court-martialed. I think there's some talk of executing her. Instead of executing her, they exile her to this kind of prison vessel, spacefaring vessel, for the entirety of her natural life. She's a total pariah. Everyone hates her. And, you're watching the show and it's like, I like Michael, but yeah, I kind of get it. She got her best friend and captain killed. Yikes, and started a fucking intergalactic war. So, this is a fascinating way to begin a show with a character. Like, where can you go from here? Is it going to be a redemption show? Is she going to escape? Is she going to get herself in more trouble? Is she going to just go all villainous? Or, what? So here's where we get to the critical thing about Michael's past. Because as I'm watching the show originally, I had not read any spoilers for it. So I didn't know this continuity implant, major continuity implant that has pissed so many people off. I kept wondering why Michael was so... I thought it was maybe the actress, because I had never seen her work before. Only heard of her. I kept wondering why she was so mannered. So precise. So, I don't know. It was a little annoying. It was kind of like when you have friends who are very nerdy and, like the comic book guy on The Simpsons or whatever, and they hyper pronounce words. They are extremely precise, and you're kind of like, dude, just breathe, just exhale, just say it. You don't have to, try to follow the godlike cardinal rules of linguistics in every enunciation that comes from your mouth. That's kind of how Michael was. And it did seem a little familiar to me in a way within Star Trek canon, but then I thought, but you quickly find out the reason is that she grew up around Vulcans. She grew up on Vulcan. So even though she is an African American Earth native, she talks like that because Vulcans influenced her. Except she's taken it, and again, I don't know if the choice, the director, the actress, both, neither, or if it's a quirk of the character. And as the series goes on, I think it is a quirk of the character at first. She is not a Vulcan, but she tries maybe overly hard to be a Vulcan since she's been a little girl. And it's like, wow. So it's a little aggravating sometimes listening to her talk in the first couple episodes until you become accustomed to it. And she begins to loosen up later too. And you're like, well, she's already an adult. She's probably like, who knows? I don't know, 30, late 20s. I'm not sure how old the character's supposed to be. I believe Sonequa was around 30 when she was cast. But say she's supposed to be 25 to 28, roughly. I'm kind of putting that in there, equating it to the age that Leonard Nimoy was at Spock. I'm going to get to why in a minute. During the original series. Or at least during The Cage, the 10 years before. So you're already like the Cage and Discovery take place around the same time. So here is the key plot implant. I already said she was raised on Vulcan since she was a little girl. So here's the deal. Not only was she raised on Vulcan, she was raised by Sarek. So Spock and her they're similar in age. And of course they can be similar in age because they're only adopted brother sister. They're not biological. So they could have been born even the same year. And there are flashbacks to them as children in season 2. So you're wondering probably, if you're coming to this cold and you've never watched Discovery or know nothing about it, then you're probably like a lot of the fan bros are still, and you're like, I never heard about Spock having no sister. What the fuck? A human sister? Spock? What? What nonsense. Well, I'll be honest, this is getting near an hour, so I'm gonna wrap up this train of thought, and then I'm gonna do a part 2. So that's something to look forward to, or dread, depending on how you feel about it. So how is this possible that Sarek and his human wife Amanda raised Spock and Michael Burnham? Well, they did. I know, I'm like, because we decided it was so, says the Paramount powers that be. This is the thing. If you really look at it, you're right. The little bit of flashbacks to Spock's youth, mainly of which are contained in the animated series more than anywhere else. You're right, there's no Michael Burnham hanging around. But just because we don't see her and they don't mention her doesn't mean they don't say we only have one child. They never say that. I mean, Spock had a biological half brother played by Lawrence Luckinbill in it's called The Final Frontier, Star Trek Five. By far my least favorite original crew movie. Star Trek of the 7 there were 6.5 if you count Generations as also the first next gen movie, but there's 6 proper, and I like to love all of them. Final Frontier I'm not down with. Just directed by William Shatner, and he really Nimoy pulled it off, man, but Shatner didn't. And that did seem like a continuity implant, an arbitrary one, but it is canon. And it's fine. Again, no, Sarek and Amanda never said we only have one child. Neither of them said we individually, as in Sarek's case, have more than one child. Or him and Amanda individually, or them as a couple said we only have one child. Who knows? Amanda could have another child by an Earthman that we just don't know about yet, who's a half brother of Spock. But as far as we know, canonically, Spock, prior to Discovery, Spock had one biological half brother. But there was never any evidence of that. So why not no evidence of a human female adopted sister? No reason. You know, I think, soap operas do it all the time, this kind of stuff. Hell, I've done it probably in Flickr Street, being influenced by soap operas. So these kind of plot devices don't bother me unless they are overtly contradicting something that has been categorically stated as canon, and this never was. So we just need to open our minds a little and accept it and see where it takes us. But that's the premise. Spock has a non-biological. Spock has an adopted sister, human adopted sister, who was raised on Vulcan from the age of maybe 10, 9, 10. I'm thinking that was about right. Maybe 8 to 10. That woman, who's around the same age as Spock, was the first officer of a ship called the Shizu, a Federation starship. That ship got embroiled in a conflict with Klingon vessels. Michael Burnham made a decision that went against her captain, Giorgio. Giorgio was pissed off, but she and Michael tried something and went aboard a Klingon vessel, and Giorgio was killed. The Klingons declared war on Starfleet. Michael was punished for insubordination and treason, essentially, and endangerment or whatever of her ship or crew or captain. The Shuzu might have been blown up for all I remember. While Michael and Giorgio were on the other ship, I don't remember that part. I can't remember if the Shuzu was destroyed. I want to say it was, but I'm just not sure. But their captain was destroyed. And so Michael serves the rest of her natural life in this kind of quarantined cargo bay prison space shuttle. So that's where we are in the first 20 minutes, half hour, not counting a few flashbacks between Giorgio and Michael together. That's where we were at in episode 1. So it's taken me an hour to get all the way through all this, and we're just only halfway through episode 1 of a 3-season show. But remember, I did cover the spin-offs that are coming out and other Star Trek minutia and a lot of other non-related stuff, but mostly TV stuff. So it's still on TV Musings. So I'm going to class this as TV Musing episode 3, and it's going to be Star Trek or Star Trek Discovery or whatever, part 1. So I'm going to see you soon in part 2. Take care. Bye-bye. Oh, wait. Long live and prosper.